When it comes to immigration in the United States, one name instantly reignites debate: Donald Trump. And with his policies once again shaping headlines, millions of immigrants, families, and visa holders across the country are watching closely to see what comes next. The conversation isn't theoretical anymore. Discussions are underway, proposals are being drafted, and sources inside the Department of Homeland Security and USCIS have begun signaling what a new wave of immigration changes could actually look like. These aren't rumors, they're the outlines of a plan that could touch every part of the system, from how green cards are issued to how work permits are approved, and even how the U.S. defines who deserves to stay and who must go. So, what does this all mean for you, for the people waiting for their status, their renewal, their chance at stability? Let's break it down clearly, piece by piece, and look at what's being discussed behind closed doors and why experts are calling this one of the most consequential moments for immigration policy in recent history. To understand the scale of what's coming, you have to look back at the last time Trump was in office. Between 2017 and 2020, his administration introduced sweeping restrictions that reshaped the immigration landscape. We saw tighter visa scrutiny, lower refugee caps, and major changes to asylum procedures. Now, according to multiple sources familiar with current planning, many of those policies are being reviewed for re-implementation, but this time with new frameworks that could go even further. The focus, officials say, is efficiency and enforcement, but behind that phrase lies a series of proposals that could dramatically affect people already living and working in the United States. The first major area of attention is work visas and employment-based immigration. Under Trump's renewed approach, the emphasis would likely shift toward protecting domestic labor markets, meaning stricter requirements for H-1B, H-2B, and other temporary worker programs. Companies may face tighter scrutiny when proving that no qualified American worker is available for a position. While the stated goal is to safeguard American jobs, this could slow down hiring for industries that depend heavily on international talent, from tech and healthcare to agriculture and hospitality. For thousands of skilled foreign workers, the uncertainty could create another bottleneck, just as many are recovering from pandemic-era backlogs. Connected to that is the issue of green card issuance. Reports suggest that the administration is considering revisiting the public charge rule, a controversial policy that aimed to deny green cards to applicants who might rely on government assistance. Although the rule was rescinded under President Biden, immigration analysts say it could resurface in a modified form. If it does, the consequences could be far-reaching. Families might once again face difficult questions about income levels, insurance coverage, and benefits usage. For many, it wouldn't just be a policy, it would mean the difference between permanent residency and continued uncertainty. Another central piece of the Trump immigration agenda under discussion involves asylum and border enforcement. The goal, according to advisors, is to re-establish order at the border, a phrase that often signals faster deportations, more detentions, and fewer opportunities for migrants to present asylum claims inside the United States. Human rights advocates are already warning that such measures could overwhelm detention centers and limit due process rights. For asylum seekers who've spent months or years waiting for their hearings, renewed restrictions could feel like déjà vu, another chapter in a story that seems to repeat itself every election cycle. The conversation doesn't end there. Family-based immigration, historically the backbone of America's system, is also under review. During his previous term, Trump and senior advisor Stephen Miller pushed to reduce the number of family visas, calling for a merit-based approach that prioritizes skills and education. That concept appears to be resurfacing, though perhaps in a revised form. While the U.S. has long prided itself on family reunification, new drafts suggest limits on extended family sponsorships, meaning it could become harder for U.S. citizens and green card holders to bring siblings or adult children to America. Immigration lawyers warn that even modest changes here could break apart families who have already waited decades to reunite. Then there's deferred action for childhood arrivals, or DACA, the program protecting so-called dreamers. DACA has survived years of legal battles, but it remains fragile. Trump has repeatedly criticized it, and though complete termination may face court hurdles, experts say administrative pressure could reduce renewals or slow approvals. For hundreds of thousands of young adults who've built their lives in the U.S., DACA isn't an abstract policy, it's their entire future. Whether they can work legally, study, and remain safe from deportation depends entirely on how this issue unfolds. The message from immigration lawyers is clear: Stay alert, stay updated, and make sure paperwork is always current. Perhaps one of the most immediate effects will be felt inside USCIS itself. Trump's team has expressed frustration with what they call inefficiencies and leniency within the agency. Plans for restructuring could include stricter application reviews, more in-person interviews, and new fee adjustments to fund enforcement activities. That could mean longer processing times or higher costs for applicants. In practical terms, a work permit renewal that now takes 6 months could stretch to 9 or 12. For small businesses relying on foreign workers, that kind of delay can be devastating. But not all proposed changes are restrictive. Some insiders hint at initiatives aimed at streamlining legal migration for high-skilled professionals and expanding merit-based pathways, essentially rewarding those with advanced degrees or specialized skills. Supporters say this could attract global talent and make America more competitive. Critics counter that it risks sidelining low-income migrants who contribute in essential industries but lack academic credentials. In either case, it signals a philosophical shift from compassion-based immigration to competition-based immigration. Meanwhile, border enforcement is expected to tighten dramatically. Policies like Remain in Mexico, which required asylum seekers to wait south of the border while their claims were processed, could return. Additional funding for wall construction and new surveillance technology is also being discussed. These moves would likely trigger immediate pushback from humanitarian groups and neighboring governments, but Trump's advisors argue that border stability must come before reform. For families trying to cross legally or reunite through consular processing, heightened security could mean longer waits and tougher screening. There's also the matter of immigration courts, which are currently buried under more than 3 million pending cases. The new strategy reportedly involves increasing the use of expedited removal, allowing certain cases to be decided without a full hearing if the applicant fails to meet preliminary criteria. While this could reduce backlogs, it also risks errors and unfair denials. Immigrants would need stronger legal representation and quicker access to attorneys, something many currently can't afford. Legal advocates fear that, in practice, faster processing could translate into less justice. Economically, Trump's renewed focus on immigration enforcement could affect businesses nationwide. Agriculture, construction, and service industries depend on immigrant labor, both documented and undocumented. If deportations rise or work permit renewals slow, supply chains could tighten again, raising prices for consumers. That's why business associations are quietly urging balanced, stronger borders, yes, but also reliable visa processing for the workers who keep the economy running. On the humanitarian side, the refugee and parole programs are likely to shrink. Expect caps on refugee admissions to fall again, potentially below 25,000 per year. Programs that allowed temporary entry for humanitarian reasons, such as the recent pathways for Haitians, Venezuelans, and Ukrainians, might be scaled back or suspended altogether. For thousands seeking refuge from conflict or disaster, the door to America could narrow once more. Beyond the policy details, there's the emotional dimension that every immigrant understands too well: the uncertainty. Families who've waited years for petitions, students planning their futures on temporary visas, workers supporting relatives back home, they all share the same question: will my status still be secure? The truth is, immigration changes never happen overnight. There are processes, reviews, lawsuits, and implementation phases. But perception matters. When fear spreads, people hesitate, they delay renewals, cancel travel, or avoid public services. That's why clarity is so important, and why you're watching this video to understand what's real, what's rumor, and what's next. So here's what we know right now. USCIS is already reviewing internal policies that could be rewritten under executive direction. That includes training materials for officers, processing priorities, and fee schedules. The Department of Labor is evaluating new verification systems to ensure employers comply with hiring laws. The Department of State is exploring more stringent background checks for visa applicants abroad. Each of these may sound bureaucratic, but together they paint a clear picture. Immigration in 2025 is heading toward tighter control and more selective approval. Still, it's important to remember that policy doesn't operate in a vacuum. Courts, Congress, and public opinion all play major roles. Legal challenges have stopped or delayed many immigration orders before, and they'll likely do so again. In other words, while some of these top 10 changes may move quickly, others could face months or even years of debate. The best approach and what I encourage you to do is stay informed, stay calm, and stay prepared. If you are a worker on a visa, make sure your documentation is renewed on time. If you're a green card holder eligible for citizenship, consider applying sooner rather than later. If you're part of a mixed status family, consult a licensed immigration attorney before making any major travel or financial decisions. Information and timing are your best defenses against uncertainty. Now, you might be wondering, how does all this affect America's broader future? Economists argue that immigration reform, whether restrictive or expansive, will shape the labor market for decades. Younger immigrants support the tax base that funds programs like Social Security and Medicare. Cutting those inflows too sharply could worsen labor shortages and slow growth. On the flip side, supporters of tighter immigration believe it will push wages higher for domestic workers. The truth, as always, lies somewhere in between. That's why the debate remains so heated and why every new policy sparks both hope and fear in equal measure. What's undeniable is that the next few months will be critical. With USCIS preparing for policy realignment, with Congress debating budget allocations, and with public attention shifting back to immigration as a top issue, decisions made now could set the tone for years. For you, that means awareness isn't optional, it's essential. So as we close today's deep dive, remember this: immigration policy affects people, not paperwork. Behind every file number is a story, a family, a dream. Whether these changes help or hurt depends not only on politics, but on how informed and proactive you are. The most powerful thing you can do right now is stay connected, understand your rights, follow verified updates, and support one another through this period of transition. If this breakdown helped you make sense of what's happening, then do me one quick favor: tap that like button so this information reaches more viewers who need clarity right now. And if you haven't already, subscribe and turn on notifications, because we're following every new USCIS announcement, court update, and policy revision as they happen. This isn't about fear, it's about preparation. And in immigration, preparation is power. Stay informed, stay hopeful, and I'll see you in the next update where we'll break down the next chapter of America's changing immigration story.